to place, and it could be very large files. But they can assume I'm probably passing some media files of some company in Hollywood, and I have to spend 5 hours. I think I spent about 5 hours today just having to mess with trying to get two computers to connect to allow me to pass the files between work and my house. It's one of those things that make you think. Even if only 1%, which is not true, even if only 1% of the traffic on torrent is legal or legally shareable, you miss out all the people who would have otherwise used the protocol. But in practice, they won't use that because they will be afraid of being characterized as a pirate. Call it a pirate. So I would normally try to use the so-called legit protocols like SSH, which doesn't have a reputation for, although it could be used to pass like 100 gigabytes of MP3s. Very few people would use it for this purpose, but it's still kind of a clean protocol, and even now it's been characterized as something that has to be blocked, and I have to give very good excuse for them to give me the permission to use port 22. So that's just been a big issue for me today, and I'm still kind of feeling very uncomfortable because I didn't get much work done. Basically, I was just struggling against these network policies and such stuff. So,
well, I mean, sort of related. I'm waiting to be capped by my ISP. I download a lot from Vido and also Linux Tracker. I get about 4 or 5 different distros every month, I would guess, maybe even more. And I'm just waiting for that fateful day when they look at my traffic, obviously see that I'm using a peer-to-peer protocol to get my distros, but not be really interested in what I'm actually getting, and then to cap my speeds. So that is a concern for me. And do I know what sort of information they hold on me? I've got no idea. They may have labelled me a copyright infringer purely because the amount that I'm downloading. I also play test a lot of online games. With, for example, recently it was Autoria, which I don't know how much data passes between myself and the server in respect to that. Do they think I'm downloading blockbuster movies? But we'll see. Moving on, got another quick topic here, and it's in regards to what we discussed yesterday, Roy, and it was the Kinect. So I'm not going to go back on the old ground of what the technology is, but just to add that apparently somebody has stepped up to the mark and written some open source drivers for the Kinect technology. So that's been announced on quite a few sites. Engadget has actually tracked down the person who did it, and apparently they're not going to be selling the code to Adafruit. There's another project in the pipeline that they have plans for with the drivers. They'll be linked on the show notes, so you can read that in full.
But the registry is very skeptical about that. I think they argue the person has provided a kind of a proof of concept thing. He probably will eventually get the working driver or a possibility of work. I think he was demonstrating this on Windows. Basically, he was trying to show a certain demo, but I don't know if he got all the functionality and all the features of the thing being transformed onto the Windows platform. But this is like a first step and an important way of breaching the securities of the so-called securities. They call it security, which is a very funny way of trying to describe something that limits your basically the threat is the user, if you see what I mean. When they say security, they basically mean security from who? From the user. The user buys the product, and the product needs to have security from the user, and that's what they mean when they say, illegal acts of breaking into it, and Microsoft is saying basically they'll call law enforcement, well, basically to protect the product of the users from the users themselves, which is a very funny thing. When you come to think about it, so maybe you get used to it, and they kind of normalize the insanity and get you to think, oh, it makes perfect sense because it happened before. Well, it's kind of not normal. If you go back to scratch and you think, well, you buy this thing, you can do whatever you want with it, as long as you, I don't know, don't smash it on somebody's head. You can just fry it. You can just burn it if you want to. It's not good for the environment, but you're allowed.
Yeah, I mean,
but Microsoft is more scared of you writing some pieces of code and connecting the thing to these pieces of code to use it in some way. and they would rather you just burn the thing than actually just use it in a way that's useful to you. So it's
Well, I mean, I suggested on the article that the possible reasoning behind one of the fears that they have of it moving away from the 360 would be because they're selling it at a loss and they're relying on people buying the related titles on the 360 to make up for the shortfall. That's possibly a reason, one of the reasons why they don't want it wandering away from the 360.
If they mass produce the thing, it should be pretty easy to make though, and it tells you perhaps I told you before about they spent I think something like $500 million just marketing the thing, and also they had to develop. I mean, this is something you can call a technology, not software. We had this discussion before because this actually involves quite a bit of I would say even innovation. Things like capturing people and trying to analyze the coordinates of the movements and everything like that. It's actually a pretty complicated thing to do. But what they do want to ensure is that they get the money back. And it's going to take many, many years and many, many things sold to get the money back. And only once you get past a certain point and you can manufacture them by the orders of millions and millions in China, probably in Foxconn or one of those companies, can you actually get to the point where you actually make a profit on the sales. But right now, they already start with a loss of almost $1 billion, and they have to climb up and to try and while manufacturing these things, they have to try and reclaim the money that they lost. It was the same with the Xbox 360 and the Xbox, where I think the time of just after the release of the Xbox 360 in around 2006-07, Microsoft had already lost $6 billion on the Xbox, or maybe it was $7 billion, and they had to climb back and try to show, look, you can actually earn this much money, and they never actually climbed. I'm pretty sure they still lost lots of money on Xbox. They sell lots of things and they get into the press, but just because they do doesn't mean they're profitable. Lots of people think if a company sells lots of things, it must be profitable. But they don't think about how much companies invest in making the thing and marketing the thing and selling it at a loss. So a company can sell lots and lots and lots of things and still lose a lot of money doing that.
Well, I think it was obvious that Microsoft wasn't impressed with its own sales for this year because Balmer only received half his bonus, I understand, or full bonus.
Sorry, I interrupt quite a bit. I should just point out very quickly that the bosses of Xbox Unit, not Xbox 360 managers, they've been leaving the company for the past 2 years, and I tracked and wrote posts about all kinds of examples, and the biggest example was, of course, Robbie Back, and that was like 4 months ago when he left along with the guy behind the Zune. And he was a president in the company, so that's the big major departure, except for Peter, who left he was the manager of the Xbox 360, and he left like in 2007, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I was just looking up something on the site that's just come in, but I think it's going to be something that we'll have to look at another time. I'll leave that one for today. Very quickly mention Sabian, my favourite distro at the moment, has an Enlightenment spin review, which I'm going to be covering very shortly. So that's got me quite interested. I'm very much into my Sabian at the moment. I've had very good experiences with it, and I would challenge anybody who says it's difficult or problematic to install. I've read conflicting reports about it prior to installing, and it's been very good. So whilst you're having your good experience over with Fedora, I'm having an equally good experience with Sabian. So
isn't that you use the GNOME version of?
Yes, I do.
That's the secondary. That's the kind of alternative one, I suppose. The default, or shall we say, the original Sabian was the KDE version. A very heavy one, about 4 gigabytes or so, of lots of applications and lots of binaries, like binary-only things like Google Earth, I think they had, and they also controversially had the 3D drivers as part of the distribution, and they had an experimental X4 file system, and you're talking about the days of like alpha or beta phase for X4. So it was really, what's the name of the guy who was behind it?
I can't remember, Italian chap, and you've got different pronunciation of it as well, so I'm going to bow
He's
to
really
your
quite a person. I quite like the guy.